How people from
The Jewish faith and indigenous spirituality view environment and nature.
Jewish tradition tells us that we should care for our planet and preserve what God created.
In Psalms 24, it says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof."
This basically is just a dramatic assumption about God owning the land.
They believe that any act of damages to our earth is an offense against the property of God.
God has gifted humanity to live and survive on this earth, and because of this, Jews believe they not only have an obligation, but they have the right and privilege to enhance the world. And they do this by procreation, planting of trees, picking up trash, anything that will make the world a better place. And if they do this and follow through with it, they consider themselves a partner with God in the act of creation.
Judaism emphasizes the need to preserve our natural resources and generate new ones for future generations. The Talmud tells the story of the man who was walking along the road when he saw another man planting a tree. The first man asked, "How long will it take you for this tree to bear fruit?" He said, 70 years, the man replied. The first man asked, "Are you so healthy that you expect to live that length of time that it bears fruit?" The man answered, "I found a fruitful world because my ancestors planted it for me. Likewise, I am planting it for my children." In fact, this religion values this tradition concept to preserve what we are given and save for future generations. Different branches of Judaism view this concept very differently. For example, Reform Judaism
is known to not take the literal word of God, making them a little bit less strict on their rules and regulations, viewing the environment and nature, versus like Orthodox and Hasidic Jews, who are usually very strict and take the literal word of God not to harm any trees, plants, by littering or killing of animals, and the unnecessary consumption of water.
Many indigenous believers believe that the natural world is sacred and consider themselves one with the element of nature.
In other words, they feel like they are connected with nature physically, spiritually, and culturally. Since the world is sacred to them, they also believe that they should preserve the lands for their future generations. There is no sacred text in Aboriginal spirituality, but many stories about creation and how the world came to be have been passed down orally through oral traditions and generations.
There is a creation story that tells us about the origins of the moon, the sun, the stars, and human beings.
These tales can act as historical lessons for us to understand how the environment was created and us within it and our relationships and purposes of human beings. In many of these stories, tricksters play an active role and help to create the world and guide humanity as we know it.
They also believed that the earth needed to be treated with dignity and reverence in order to maintain in harmony with their surroundings. An example of this would be like when plants or animals are on their grounds, they are
to remain there and to be left alone.
It would also be certain to use every part of what they take in, so to ensure no waste.
These two cultures share a lot more differences than they do similarities.
They both try to preserve nature/environment for future generations to come and take only what they need from the environment to preserve natural resources. But in the Jewish perspective, they preserve, protect, and enhance the earth, but indigenous people believe that they have a physical, cultural, and spiritual connection with the earth, and that preserves it itself. In the Jewish faith, they also have different branches which follow the teachings of environment more strictly, and indigenous people all view nature in the same way. Jewish people believe that God owns the world and has gifted them the privilege to survive and create their own life on it, versus indigenous people, they believe that they have earned the right to survive on the earth by having a connection with the environment. And lastly, the Jewish faith believes that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and indigenous people believe that the world should be respected and is sacred.
Overall, the Jewish faith and indigenous spirituality have a lot of differences and similarities, but they both view the world as sacred and it shall be respected.